Happy holidays, everybody. I hope you're having a good, safe, and healthy holiday, whether you're off from school or from work, you're staying home, you're going to work, whatever it is. I hope you're having a good time, and I hope you enjoy this video. This is a video I've wanted to make for a few Christmases now, and I've thought about doing it for a few Halloween specials as well, and I decided this year it was finally time to talk about Black Christmas, the 2006 remake directed by Glen Morgan. Sometimes when I see that a film has really bad reviews from critics or the audience, I get it. I understand. The movie didn't work, it wasn't very good, maybe it was truly awful. When it comes to the 2006 remake of Black Christmas, I don't understand the reaction. This film feels light years ahead of many horror remakes in regards to style, camera work, cinematography and lighting, action, kills, tension building. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the 2006 Black Christmas is a great film. I just think that it's unfairly maligned. I think it's far better than the reception it's gotten, and I do think it's worthy of reevaluation. And just as a warning, if you haven't seen the 2006 Black Christmas, I am going to get into spoilers. I do really recommend that you see it. I think it's much better than people say, and we're going to talk about why. I'm well aware of the film's production issues. Glen Morgan, who directed the film, previously having directed Willard with Crispin Glover, also a horror remake, has spoken out a lot about the issues that the film suffered, namely at the hands of the Weinsteins, who once again are being brought up in one of these reviews. Whenever I talk about a horror film from the 90s or the early 2000s, it seems like they had a hand in it, and they often butchered it. Nearly every filmmaker that ever worked with them, save for a few giant names who had a lot of clout, have talked about how the Weinsteins ruined their vision and forced them to do all kinds of things. In the case of Black Christmas, Glen Morgan has spoken about how he didn't want the film to be as gory as it is, how many endings were shot. There were entire ideas that were never his. He had to go behind the studio's back and film scenes without their permission that ended up in the cut. It was a nightmare of a shoot, and it didn't go over well for him in regards to critics, audience, or box office. Nobody seemed to really respond to this movie. He even was quoted as saying that he would never direct again if this movie failed, and it did, and except for some episodes of The X-Files, he hasn't. His work with James Wong, his frequent collaborator on The X-Files, I think is genius. I think between Willard and Black Christmas 2006, Glen Morgan proved himself to be an extremely talented director. His camera work in both of those films has shown that he learned so much from potentially shadowing many directors on The X-Files, and that he has a really unique vision of his own. And if you watch both Willard and Black Christmas '06 back to back, and just look at the camera work, the way Morgan builds tension throughout his scenes, I really do think that if he had been allowed to continue to direct horror, he could have been a James Wan or a Mike Flanagan. He really knows exactly where to position the camera for maximum tension. He has a lot of shots in this movie that feel very De Palma-esque with split diopter, very intense close-ups, and some truly amazing dolly work. Like this shot through a Christmas tree towards our main villain. But he also cared about the original Black Christmas film, which is fairly iconic in regards to slashers. It was very early for that kind of film. And he talked with Bob Clark a lot.
It's a guest here that I want to welcome. That's the reason we're all here. This is Bob Clark. He directed the original Black Christmas.
This one is feeling fabulous. I'll tell you guys, everything about it just feels fabulous.
Who directed the original Black Christmas and also A Christmas Story, which is why I'm wearing this shirt. It's kind of a deep cut, but I thought it'd be fun. When we first meet Billy, he's locked up for some crime we don't know about yet, and the edit here is brilliant. We only see him for a few frames as these Christmas lights inside his cell light up. The way Morgan denies us a really good look at this guy for a long time is really smart. It treats him like he's an actual monster. He's not showing him that much, and you get curious about what he looks like, and you build up in your imagination this horrifying person, even though he just looks like a human being. When you eventually do see his face, there's such a build-up to that reveal that it does feel like it's the shark in Jaws or some monster out of a creature feature. As already mentioned, this film also has excellent use of lighting, like this scene in a hallway, rotating between these different colors. That's not just coming off of those little bulbs on the wall. That's a whole nother setup that's creating that on the actors' faces. That takes a lot of time, especially when you're doing it from both ends of the hallway. Or the shadow of Billy Billy's dead body shifting places on the ceiling. The whole movie looks incredible. The Christmas decorations on the outside of the house and on the inside, the color scheme of reds and golds and greens. There's also some highly effective and very disturbing flashback sequences that show Billy when he was young and the very messed up relationship he had with his mother. This shot of him crawling on his knees, for some reason, really gets under my skin. I love how wide it is, I love how we rest on this shot for a long time, and I love the awkward way this kid is crawling. Everything about this kid's home life is weird. And speaking of home, Billy's mother is portrayed by Karin Konoval, who was also in what is perhaps the best and most graphic X-Files episode called Home, as the mother kept underneath the bed. If you've seen that episode, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I can only guess, but if Glen Morgan has said that he didn't want the film to be as gory as it was, it's possible that he didn't love the idea of Billy making his Christmas cookies in a way that Hannibal Lecter would very much have approved of. But even if he didn't love that idea, I do. I think it's great. I love it. I love him just sitting there eating those cookies, drinking milk when the cops show up. That's a fantastic scene, and there is actually a lot of mythology built up around Billy, which didn't happen as much in the original Black Christmas. And I think if you're like a purist of that film and you don't like any changes, then you really will not like the 2019 version. But this version does change things, but I think it changes them in a way that enhances the story for this film, especially that it takes place entirely on one night and almost exclusively in this sorority house. And so it feels very claustrophobic, and there's tons of tension because of that. Even the flashbacks take place in this same house, even though it's many years prior, but it all feels like you're still there and you're in this moment. It feels very cozy for that reason. There are also terrific stunts in this film and very good action directing. There's a stunt where someone is falling through the wall and it looks 100% real, and it doesn't break away from it. Morgan is also very good at cutting to very intense close-ups of action and movement. He treats all of those moments as if they're special and worthy of their own shot. I also liked how the film doesn't really let you know who the protagonist is. It felt very much like Alien in that regard, whereas you're watching Alien, it's everybody. You don't really know who you're supposed to follow until Sigourney Weaver rises to the surface as Ripley. And in this film, they give each girl ample screen time and ample characterization to the point where you're not really sure who our lead is. Now that might be a little disconcerting for an audience because you don't quite know if you're rooting for someone above the others, but that's part of the fun, I think. And once Katie Cassidy's character becomes the protagonist near the end of the film, you can start to look back on the movie and her choices and the things that she wanted to do and understand that the film was kind of secretly getting you on her side. Which leads to a really good set piece where she's trapped in the walls and Agnes is below her and Billy is above her. I've never seen a scene like that where people are converging inside of a wall. Where the tension deflates a bit is in this cut to a hospital. We've been in this house for the whole movie and the hospital does feel very tacked on. And this is where you can start to feel that Dimension Films Weinstein presence saying like, do this and do that, and I don't care about your vision, just do this. I don't like speculating and I don't like paraphrasing and I don't like putting words into filmmakers' mouths, and I certainly will do my best not to do that. But I can assume that since there are multiple alternate endings on the DVD, that there were a lot of changes and a lot of attempts to appease test screenings over and over again, and it was probably a nightmare of an experience for Glen Morgan. The reason I think the film works as well as it does is because of him. I think he has an incredible eye behind the camera, and I wish that he directed a ton more horror films since. I think it's really sad that he hasn't directed a film since 2006, and I would love to see him do more. Another big mistake was that the film was released on Christmas Day. Now, it's not to say that people don't want to go see horror on Christmas. This should have been released like the first week of December. Not on Christmas Day, because then everyone goes on Christmas Day for the Christmas movie, and then do you really want to go see a Christmas movie on December 30th? No, because you just went through 2 months of hearing Christmas songs in every store. You're tired of Christmas at that point, and so this should have come out like around the time Violent Night did this year. Early December, then you have a whole month to cash in on the Christmas craze. I don't know why that choice was made, but that's not the film's fault. That's the marketing. That's the studio. But I honestly think that if this exact film came out today as it is, it would be treated differently. Because I think that it represents a time in horror where you could make an almost $10 million movie in essentially one house. And you didn't have to have a script by Kevin Williamson. You didn't have to be Wes Craven. And that was greenlit. And it feels big. It feels like a theatrical experience, even though you're just in the one location for most of the movie. And I also think the film is directed so much better than a lot of the digital made-for-TV looking horror that we get nowadays from studios who kind of make things really quickly. And this doesn't feel like that. It feels like it has a vision. It feels like it has a driving force behind the camera. And I would love to see more from Glen Morgan if he ever decides to make more films. And if you watch this video, man, I know you hate this movie apparently, but I love it, and thank you for making it, and I want to see you make more movies. So guys, if you've never seen the Black Christmas remake, the 2006 one, because of its reputation, maybe give it a watch. You might not like it. It's not a perfect movie. It does have issues, and you can tell that someone behind the scenes was kind of ruining things a lot, and it's not the filmmaker. Watch it this Christmas. It's a good, gory time. It's only like 92 minutes. It flies by. I think it's really well done, and I do think it's worthy of reevaluation. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Once again, happy holidays. I hope you guys had a great one. If you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmannized.